Welcome to the IDP Hunter podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hungarter. You guys know me on Twitter as the IDP Hunter. I am a writer and analyst over at the Fantasy Six Pack, RPO Network, and the IDP Center. Today, we're going to talk Week 18. We're going to talk about all the players you can stash on your IDP leagues. We're going to talk about those taxi stashes, those players in IRs. But you know what? I'm not going to do it alone. You know me. I'm always bringing in guests. This week, I'm a top 7 IDP ranker on Fantasy Pros. But again, I don't want to talk football this week. I don't know about you, Giles. I don't want to talk about football no more. I want to talk about all the leagues that I'm still playing in, that I have Dynasty Stashes. I want to get all of those guys out there in the universe. Maybe you can help me put together a template for the audience. So in the offseason, maybe they too can be aggressive in the waiver wire in the market. So what's going on, my friend?
Oh, not much, man. Just hanging out the house in the middle of a blizzard right now. And
you were telling me.
Oh, yeah, dude, it's ridiculous. But as we all know, the least interesting part of fantasy football is the actual football game. So, we want to talk about lineups. We want to talk about pickups and, all those good things.
And that's why I brought you on, Giles. For the audience that doesn't know Giles, he's actually a super fan. And he's one of my favorite players to play with because he's always competitive. He plays in the most amazing lineups. Giles, how many leagues are you in right now?
Right now, like in terms of dynasties, I probably cut it down to about 7 or 8. I used to be in way more.
And I would see you in the craziest of leagues. I mean, we started talking on some best ball lineups that we were in with some crazy managers and whatnot. But we were always roster and player draft strategies. What do you think the craziest or best, depending how you look at it, what do you think the best deepest lineup that you have out there?
So there's one league in particular. It's 16 teams. It's IDP, offense, and Devy all in one.
Oh,
and I think you start 13 on either side of the ball, and then your Devy players take up roster spots. So to draft a college guy, they're going to eat up a roster spot the whole time they're in college. So, and you got a huge taxi, limited IR, but it's highly competitive. I mean, you have some teams who, like one guy will only draft LSU guys. He does not care. He doesn't want anybody in his team who didn't go to LSU, so he's not very good. But then most people are pretty competitive. But because it's Devy, I don't know. You can find value in there, and you can trade a college quarterback who you don't believe in, and maybe get yourself a Sam Darnold plus and turn into something special.
Don't you love those guys that they're just committed to their college teams? I know when I first started playing IDP or just fantasy in general, one of the first things I put in the chat, I'd be like, hey, where are y'all from? Because I want to know that guy in Indianapolis, he's a Colts fan. That guy in Philadelphia, he's an Eagles fan. I will sell you my bag of trash so I can get the best stash I possibly can later on.
Oh, yeah. I'm in a league with a bunch of Cowboys fans, and I had CeeDee Lamb. I put him on the block. I ended up getting like Ladd McConkey, Khalil Shakir, a running back of note, and like 8 picks, all for CeeDee Lamb. And like he's super worth it. But I got like 3 firsts out of him and a bunch of players.
I knew you would be perfect to do this episode with as far as, the future roster management, deep stash. I mean, bar none, you're one of the best that I know. You're in leagues, just destroying them right now. I've never asked you, though, Giles, how long have you been playing fantasy football or even IDP in general?
Well, fantasy football since 2005. I mean, the first year, I know my very first round pick ever was Steven Jackson. It was that year after Falk retired, and it was going to, and like, so it's funny, you buy the fantasy magazine. I didn't know anything about fantasy football. And I read this thing cover to cover over the course of a few days. And when the draft came, everybody I drafted was like a sleeper. I took all sleepers on my team. It didn't really work out. But that was like Plaxico Burress' first year with the Giants. And I learned so much. And IDP, I don't think I got into till a few years later. And it was always limited. It never really felt meaningful because you're talking starting 3 guys, and
right,
your linebacker gets outscored by every dude on the wire, and you're like, what's the point of any of this?
You'll hear me say that on my shows too. I'm like, dude, if you're not taking the full investment of, at least 7 or more defense. You're not really getting that value of whatever. But yeah, I like the 7 on 11s. What's your favorite kind of league format?
Mine, I like pretty much even 11-11, 10-10, whatever you want to do. And you want to tweak the scoring so that obviously the quarterback should always lead it. And probably your top end offensive players should be at the top, but then those elite IDP guys should be right in that realm too. You don't want a situation where like your average off the, waiver wire linebackers outscoring Joe Burrow.
Exactly.
But you need them to matter.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't ask you this either. I kind of like IDP 1-2-3, which is a sleeper default now, because if my offense, whatever league I'm in scoring, it matches it. So if I'm doing 1-2-3 and the offense is crazy, I can do double that 2-4-6, 3-6-9, whatever the case may be. But I like to have a balanced. So you like combo leagues like I do, it sounds like.
Oh, 1,000%. It adds variance. It allows for, especially when you take over an orphan. This is the key, because in your average super flex offense only league, you take over an orphan, there's almost no path to rebuilding that doesn't take 5-6 years of just donating your buy-in to the league.
Right.
But with IDP, you can find value on the margins that makes you competitive earlier if you're really grinding, and you can make up the difference.
You're saying all the key words to me. Orphan, grinding. Sometimes in the offseason, I'll just take an orphan just to see if I can fix it, just see if I can break it. It's like my pacifier. I'm like a baby at a pacifier. I'm trying to see what I can make moves. So teams leagues that shut down in the offseason, you're not really doing your owners any kind of service. Anybody can read off a ranking. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring you on, Giles, because I wanted to look at some of the deep stashes and spend a little time on those. But in order to do that, I got to actually, maybe put together some tips, rationale, maybe do a shallow league, and maybe you can help me with some helpful pointers. So the first one that I put on the screen, and, this may be common sense. This may be common sense to some people, but I'd say tip number 1, just like the real NFL, look at draft capital, the top 100 guys that got taken from 19 to 2023. I'm going through my waiver wire now. And I'm trying to see what guys fall, what guys don't. That's just to me, that's common sense. But, I like to put that out in the universe and tell folks that,
Well, yeah, because especially when you talk about those top 100 guys drafted, we have a tendency after year 1 to assume a guy didn't play, he's bad, or the team doesn't like him or something. Like, think about Nakobe Dean. Think about Terrell Bernard. These are guys who did nothing year 1. The turnaround year 2, Bernard gets a job, instant star. Dean, when he's finally healthy in year 3, instant star. Like, you just got to remember, these teams drafted these guys for a reason, unless they just turn out to be complete losers, or there's a change in the front office or the coaching staff where they just kind of get left behind. Like, I think Brian Asamoah is a good example of the other side of that. Somebody who just never gets the opportunity, and maybe one day he will somewhere else. But yeah, you got to remember, like, these guys got drafted, and that's where you find your opportunity. Who did somebody let go of who, they didn't do anything year 1, but they're going to get the shot year 2.
To your point, like, offense to me is kind of easy because I can kind of look through a depth chart pecking order. The talent rises to the top. When you look at like teams like the Bills, for example, okay, they don't have it like that, especially their linebacker core. They have a guy who will sub in for the green dot. They have a guy that'll sub in for the will. They have a guy so they have a whole entire kit just dedicated for that side of the ball. And then another example to your point, the Packers. The Packers are loaded at most positions. They don't even start playing their draft capital guys till probably year 2 or year 3. Yeah. We have one in this video that we wanted to kind of put out. But yeah, you got to look at the teams because context matters. But I think draft capital is an excellent point. Tip 2. And I almost didn't want to put this on here, Giles, because I'm in leagues with you, and I don't want to give you any extra advantages that you don't already have. Okay,
I already won the league. It's fine, dude.
I know you did. But I got to get an edge back. I got to get my edge. But anyway, so tip 2. This is something I do. I do this every year. You want to target your 2-year players that have been in the league about 2 years, and maybe they're buried on ADP because they haven't broke out yet. So literally what I'll do is I'll sit here on my phone. I'll go to my sleeper app and, I'll look at players available. but I'll go back to the season ADP 2023, and I'm literally just sitting here and I'm scrolling the position. Giles, I'm going through my leagues now, and I don't know what the heck is going on. I just told you offline, I found Christian Wilkins just sitting out there. You'll find guys that people forget about. It's a good place. I said 2 years, but it's a good place to look for guys that are third, fourth year breakouts or guys that haven't really been hit yet.
Or just injured guys who get dropped.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, like, for this, for example, Tyree Wilson's out there right now. Miles Murphy's out there. Joseph Adai that we'll talk about later. And to your point, for the tip 3, to your point, you're saying check the IR, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because there are 2 ways you can do that. A, you look for guys on IR with that designation, but they're free agents. But also look at people on IR on people's rosters. They may have forgotten about, maybe they don't really value them as much anymore because they've been hurt for an extended period of time. You might be able to throw out, I don't want to say a low ball offer, but a less than market value for the healthy guy offer. You might be able to pick somebody off their IR for a lot less than if they were healthy. And you want to do that now at the end of the season when people are gearing down. They're not even thinking about the rookie draft yet. Like fantasy, dynasty in particular is all about striking at the right time of year. You don't want to sell your draft picks till right before the draft. You don't want to buy draft picks till in season when people don't care about them anymore. And with IR guys, end of the season when we're waiting for them to come back healthy, get them now. Go buy them.
So I literally, as we're talking, I looked at one of my leagues, IR, and I'm looking at season ADP because the ADP part is important to search for because this is where people were drafting them last year, right? So I'm looking at the ADP, IR, what happened to these guys? And here's a couple names that just popped to me. Braden Trice, remember him? For the Falcons? Yeah. What happened there? BJ Ojulari, Jalen Petrie went down at some point. Jermaine Johnson. I just want to walk this home. Jermaine Johnson should not be a player that is on anybody's. They should not be on anybody's waiver wire right now, but yet he is. He shows up on play. I think what it is the casual leagues, the smaller leagues. I think what they do is they're looking at Will McDonald right now, but Jermaine Johnson was the breakout the year before. But he's a
more complete player than Will McDonald.
Oh, I agree because Will McDonald, he has that issue with tackling. But this guy right now, believe it or not, this is more of a shallow find. Jermaine Johnson, he's only rostered in 33% of leagues. He offers you that young, high upside motor, which is a player I'm interested in. And then I'll throw one more for this shallow defensive lineman. What about Kalijah Kancey, 28% rostered? Okay,
Kalijah Kancey, I think I look at him kind of in the same way as Kobe Turner, right? Kobe Turner, same draft class. Actually, Kancey's probably younger, but he's just kind of a pass rushing interior defensive lineman. He's on an up and coming defense, like all the snaps in the world. Like I think that's one definitely I would target. And again, like you can find value in that position because in a lot of leagues, you're not starting defensive tackles, so people kind of deprioritize them. But he can still offer you value in that DL slot.
Right. And then with him too, right? I don't know if stats are a big deal to you, but I mean, he gobbled up 7.5 sacks over the last 11 games. He's just 23 years old. It's a good indicator if you look at the kind of player that he can be. Again, 28% rostered. Come on now, 33%. Those are 2 defensive linemen. I'm pretty sure you could start most places.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's one of those things where when we get in these deeper dynasties, you're not always going to be able to go out and get Brian Burns. Like they're just not there. So you got to find those defensive tackles who, they have pass rushing upside, but some kind of a tackle floor. And so it's look at the archetype, right? Kobe Turner, Kalijah Kancey. They're a little bit smaller framed, a little bit quicker. They penetrate more. Maybe they're not set against the run. But that archetype plays in fantasy.
So those are – I only had 2 for like shallow leagues like there. I don't know if you have any other defensive linemen for shallow leagues. Linebackers looking good. I got Leo Chanel, Jamie Sherwood, Troy Anderson. People forget Troy Anderson. He's only 25 years old despite all of these – worthwhile injuries, but he's still stashed to me. He's something when he's healthy. Any comments? Do you have any DLs or linebackers in shallower leagues that you think that you see out there that are worth picking up or stashing?
Well, I mean, first of all, Leo Chanel, I agree with you completely. I think he is an elite linebacker who, for some reason, does not play a lot of snaps. Last year in the playoffs,
Right.
he graded over 90 per PFF. He was the best linebacker in the playoffs all the way throughout. Whenever he's on the field, like you see a 60% snap share, I guarantee you're seeing a blow-up performance for Chanel. And what we're waiting for is for him to go to another team, because clearly, unless they get rid of Bolton or something, he's not going to play the snaps. But I think he's one of those guys who could go on to another team and be a Foyer type guy for Dynasty, where like he's 24 years old still. Like he could go somewhere and have a 7-8 year run of elite play. Yeah, I'd buy him anywhere I could. If he's for free, I'm taking him. Of course, I'd drop not anybody, but in that realm, though, I also think Chad Muma is a diet version of this same thing. Because when he did get on the field his rookie year, he looked pretty good. He hasn't really been on much since. But I think that's one of those guys who can get to another team. And that's what we're talking about here in a lot of cases. It's not like you're not finding these guys on the wire because they're starters and they're performing at a high level. Sometimes they're, you're going to have to wait. Jamie Sherwood, I had him last year all year. He barely played in these snaps. But this year, the guy got hurt, and boom, he's in there, and he's an elite linebacker suddenly.
Yeah, I have to pay you a compliment with Sherwood. I think you were one of the first people that I knew that snagged Sherwood, like out of all the leagues I play in. And then the year before, you were all over Ivan Pace. Like he got the green dot preseason game, 0? First game, first week. You got most of the leagues that I'm in with you. You snag a player a minute or two before I think about it. If I hesitate and breathe, he's gone. So kudos to you on those.
Well, and the funny thing about Ivan Pace is a lot of me going out and getting him everywhere was more because I was a Brian Asamoah guy who I really believed in Asamoah. But I saw Pace, I knew him from Cincinnati, and I was like, this is going to be bad for Brian, because Pace he's just a gamer, man. He gets out there, and I think defense coordinator Flores is the perfect guy for him. An aggressive, undersized middle linebacker. Like he's gonna love the kid. So I just knew he was gonna get the shot.
Heck yeah. And I guess we'll go into this too a little bit. I'll pull it up a little bit. But when you read the tea leaves for undrafted free, restricted free agents, Jamie Sherwood's a free agent. So he put on an audition this year. How was that for a resume? The Jets are probably stuck with CJ Mosley with the contract, whatnot. Sherwood's probably going to go to a team and be some team's LB1. So that's why I'm thinking about him. A lot of savvier managers like Giles, they already kind of know who that is. But if you're in a league that's shallower, that's why I put him here. You might be able to sneak him in. The case for Leo Chanel, though, Bolton's a free agent. And if Bolton leaves, let's face it, there's a lot of times this year I couldn't play Bolton, or he might have been a flex. So Bolton, aggravated a lot of Andrews. Let's just assume the Chiefs are smart with their money, and he walks, and maybe some team like the Eagles or somebody picks up Bolton. Chanel just jumps right into it. So that can be a free. Again, this is all speculative. It's not even off season yet. We're kind of reading the tea leaves, but that's why I got those guys in there.
And I mean, there is some precedent there, because like Bolton, these last couple of years haven't been what they were prior, and they let Willie Gay go, and he was a part of Super Bowl runs. Like we could definitely see them let him walk, because they can only pay so many people. And you have Chanel. At some point, you've got to really see what you have in him. And I think he's got one more year on the rookie deal. And
right.
I mean, yeah, and they play two linebackers anyway, so he doesn't have to be the only guy there. It's just right now they have three guys who they want to rotate in and out, and it just kind of kills Chanel always.
I like to hoard, I guess the word is. I don't know if you ever see that with that TV show Hoarders, how people hoard stuff.
Oh,
I like to hoard elite defensive linemen, which I got a couple in mind coming up here. But I like to hold linebacker volume, elite defensive linemen. I don't have too many defensive backs that I hoard, but there's a couple guys I'm thinking about. Let me just put some out here. I'll give you three, and maybe you can help me walk and explain the rationale. I got Jordan Battle, owned 33% of leagues. Since week 12 bye, I wrote the article on Fancy Six Pack box snap safeties. He became the box snap guy. He's not that great of a tackler, but he's a better tackler than what they had before him. So he ended up getting the lineups. Yeah, he ended up replacing Von Bell. Geno Stone's not that great of a tackler either. That's the problem with these teams. Yeah, that's the problem with these teams. They run these 3-3-5 kind of schemes. You got all these defensive backs on the field. They better be able to tackle. But Battle being a third-round pick in 2023, he was promising. He comes in, he tallied 32 tackles in 5 games. Again, I'm not holding on to those box scores, but that's a good indicator of next year. I got him as a tier 2 defensive back. And another one, same vein, we all remember Cole Bishop. We were picking him up early in drafts. Didn't really pan out until we seen the Rap Hamlin thing kind of play out. Hamlin's contract's expiring in the offseason. So there's a good chance he just straight up moves in and takes that job full time. And we've seen him produce in the last couple weeks. So I got Bishop, I got Battle, and then I would say people that don't know who Tyke Smith is, I'm sure you could agree. Hey, you know what? You need to start paying attention to Smith as well. Thoughts there?
Well, first of all, Battle, I actually thought after last year, there was no way he wasn't going to start for Cincinnati. And then they go out in free agency and they pay some dudes who are over the hill and not that good. Made no sense. Geno Stone, I did not understand the signing. And then Battle just kind of sits there, does nothing all year. And I know because I traded you for him early in the year.
Yeah, right.
And that happened. I was like, oh, are we kidding me right now? But, I'm not going to drop the guy because I know he's talented. And, yeah, sure enough, like you said, after the bye, here we are. He's playing well. He's probably the best safety on the roster at this point, and he's young. So why would they not give him a shot next year? Tyke Smith, I think he can be elite no matter where they put him. He maybe wouldn't want to be like a box strong safety, but he has the mentality of one if he wants to. He plays nickel corner like a box safety. That dude is just a heat-seeking missile. He will not be denied. He'll shed blocks. Like, I'm a huge fan of Tyke Smith. If he can stay healthy, he's got elite, like, I want to say Kenny Moore style upside in terms of the stat set, like high volume tackles. And then Cole Bishop, I don't know yet. Obviously, I drafted him places. We liked the opportunity. He didn't get it.
Right.
Big guy, physical. Kind of likes to bite on play action a lot. At least he did in college. We'll see how that plays in the NFL. Hopefully he learns. It's not like the guy he's replacing was the greatest guy in coverage anyway. Hamlin, always been limited. I would add a couple guys. So Marte Mapu with New England. With like super crazy hybrid athlete out of a small school. They drafted him way earlier than anybody projected. And this year we're finally seeing it on the field. I think he has just that kind of like you don't know what you're going to get out of him type of DB. He could get sacks. Like what we wanted Isaiah Simmons to be, maybe he could be. I'd pick him up on almost anywhere where he's available for me. The kind of upside in that archetype is higher than most any guy you could find. And then Dane Belton with the Giants. I don't know. I think he's just playing super well. He's got big play upside. I'm big on him. And do I have any other? No, those are the only 2 DBs that I have on my list right now. But you know me, I'm big on like just pick them up, play them, see what it's all about the usage. Where are they playing? How many snaps? Who are they going to cover if they're a corner?
Yeah, and with corners too, I was thinking CB required leagues. Actually, I got 2 more. I got CB required leagues, DT required leagues for those shallower types. Drew Phillips of the Giants. He's only owned in 10%. I don't understand that. The guy recorded 67 tackles, 42 solos. Okay,
and he didn't even play that much. Like
exactly,
he missed a lot of games. Yeah.
Oh my God, such a valuable stash right there. I don't know where these roster numbers come from. Maybe it's the fact that people don't play CBs in general, but I'd play him.
Or they have shallow rosters, so he just wouldn't. Right. He'd be below the cut line. But actually, he's a good example of something I wanted to talk about too: the impact of offensive competency on IDP players. Right. So there are times where you will have a defensive player on a team with a really good offense, and like I don't know, on the other side, like you need when you're playing against a team, you need the other offense to be able to sustain drives, right? So if you're playing a bad offense, your defensive player on the other side of that might not get many stats because that team can't string together first downs. But with the other side of that is the Giants, where they could not stay on the field offensively. So their defense lived on the field. So their DBs had way more opportunities to get stats than they would have otherwise if the Giants were able to move down the field, eat up clock, and score. So I think that's something I'm really going to target in leagues next year when I'm just kind of picking guys up on the wire. Who is on a team with a terrible offense because they're probably going to play a lot more snaps. That's just something I hadn't really thought of too much in the past. And this year, it's just there's some really inept offensive teams, and it paid dividends for the IDPs.
You can go two ways with that. You can go teams that are playing with poor offenses, like the Giants. Bobby Okereke for years, he's just sitting there and getting all this snap time. You could also look at in my division, what are teams that are competent offenses that articulate the ball. You keep the down, you keep playing it. I'm going to get more stats. You know what I mean? There's a lot of ways you can do that. That's kind of
It just depends on which way you're looking at it. But exactly, I'm not starting linebackers against bad offenses anymore because they're just not going to do anything because the team's not going to stay on the field to run the ball enough. Then they're going to fall behind, and then they're going to just throw. And that killed me enough this year.
I don't know if you play in any DT required leagues. I don't on Sleeper. Of course, I play on MFL. I always get away with the Cameron Hayward types, but I think next year I'm targeting Braden Fisk. He's only on 32%, right? It's a bit unfair when he came in the league. He was, heralded as the Aaron Donald replacement. That's not true. No one could replace that kind of talent. But he did end up with 8 sacks this year. I had a guest on Giles, the Pro Football Rookie Analysis. They had him as their top rookie overall with the metrics and everything. I think if I'm in a DT required league, I think I'm going to go after Fisk, and I'm going to enjoy that. I don't know if that's your guy there. Do you have anybody for DTs?
As far as Braden Fisk, I agree. Pass rushing upside, playing next to a guy, Kobe Turner, who can take a lot of attention. For DT required, I don't play in any, so I don't really think of it a lot. Milton Williams is a guy that I think is just like free everywhere, who if he ever moves teams or finds himself into a higher snap percentage, like the guy's just really good. But offhand, no, I don't have anybody else that I would talk about for DT required because I don't play in any. I'm just on Sleeper.
Right, me neither. Yeah. If I have to exploit it, I will. And, DT you can stream nowadays. When we first started playing, that was like tight end. Get an elite guy, that's it. Nowadays, I can go 10, 11, 12 defensive tackles, and I'll still be okay. I was just curious.
And a lot of the guys I would talk about, like, they were probably drafted in your league, and people are probably hanging on to them, like Johnny Newton. There's not a lot of guys. Like, again, I'm looking for the Bosa's. I'm trading firsts to go get those guys. Well, not first in a mixed league. But if I could package, a second and something to go get an elite pass rusher, that's what I want.
Cool. Hey, so I guess I want to transition a little bit when we're talking about middle-sized leagues, mid to deep. There's like 4 or 5. I'm gonna say 4. I could probably do 5. There's 5 defensive linemen that I'm looking at that I think have that high elite upside that I'm really interested in kind of talking about, and it's kind of like who I target. I look for that elite defensive lineman up and coming. So I kind of want to pick your brain on some of these. Some of these are common sense. Like, I guess I'll start with the first one, and I don't even know if I'm saying it right. The Chargers, what's his name? Tolopo.
Oh, yeah, dude, that's my guy.
Yeah.
He's stat sheet stuffer. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. And then, he achieved 8.5 sacks on a part-time role. He led the team. He had an 8.8 pressure rush rate, which is pretty good. But 2 years ago, PFF had him 11.9. That was third amongst the rookies. No snaps, limited snaps, leading the team. Here's the key right here, what I want to kind of tell the audience. Khalil Mack, he's an unrestricted. He's a free agent, right? Joey Bosa, that
Never
team's going to
played.
take it. Yeah, they're going to take a cap hit with him of $26.1 million, or they're going to take a dead cap hit of $36.3 million. So assuming that one of those two guys leaves, Tully's your guy there. Tully's
100%. 100%. And the thing about him too is he's not one dimensional. Like going back to USC, like he was great against the run. Like I think his tackle for loss rate was like exceptional amongst edge rushers. And the guy I think he played a little heavier at a point and he lost some weight, but like he's somebody that I think on passing downs you could reduce inside to get some pressure from the interior if you have more pass rushers. Like I love Thule. Big fan.
So another guy I'm looking at, and me and you knew this name, and I might have waited too long to do his podcast because now he's starting. Joseph Asai of the Bengals. He was outplaying Hubbard for most of the year. Now Hubbard went down injury. So he's quietly put together 4 sacks over the last 5. Actually, he's put together 4 sacks in 5 of the last 6 games. That's what he did. In the last 6 games, he's produced out of 5 of them. Here's where he ranked. Week 11, he was DL32 with a sack. They had a bye in week 12. Week 13, DL18, 1 sack. Week 14, DL17, a sack. Week 16, heating up, DL10, 1 sack. And then finally last week, week 17, DL10 with half a sack. His most notable performances, the 16 and 17, that's when Hubbard went down. He's getting over 77% sack usage. So I think long-term, this team may move away from Hubbard's, little injuries and whatnot. They may use a side moving forward. So that's a guy I want to take a chance with. That's a guy that in, middle of the shallow leagues, you might be able to snatch.
Well, yeah, and the thing there, it's interesting from a couple angles. Well, Hubbard, like he's a super solid player, but he's just not a good pass rusher. He's a good edge defender. Like he's good against the run. I think he's probably like a good team leader guy, good locker room guy. He just doesn't finish sacks. Like there's that play this year where I think it was Lamar got a touchdown pass away where he just basically fended off Hubbard on the rush. And like, it's just like an elite guy doesn't lose that sack. But Asai is tough because early on, I thought he had a lot of potential. Then he had that late hit on Mahomes in the playoffs that cost the Bengals a game. Last year, he didn't really play. And when he put him on the list, it was funny. I almost was like, why Joseph Asai? And I had to look at his game log because I just had filed him away in the back of my memory. Like he's just not a guy. They drafted Miles Murphy. Obviously, he's going to eventually take over. But yeah, he's been playing well. I don't know. I haven't watched any of the real tape on it, like specifically to see what he's been doing. But the numbers don't lie.
It's so hard to do these so early on because you're either putting no shit common sense guys or you're putting stuff that nobody's even thinking about, like total dart throws. And that's who my next guy is. This guy's owned 0% of leagues. He's a sneaky one for me to target. I'm kind of interested in this guy. I've been on this guy 2 years ago since he was a senior when he's at the Senior Bowl. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Jaxel Hunt, I think that's how you say it.
It's Jalix, I believe.
Yeah. I was way off on that one. Jalix Hunt, okay? 23.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was during the draft process.
Tell me if this doesn't excite you. He's a converted safety to defensive lineman. I don't think I've ever heard that combination before.
I've definitely not heard of that. I've heard safety to linebacker a bunch, and I love those guys.
He was a last year Senior Bowl second.
Put on a lot of weight.
Yeah, he did. Last year, Senior Bowl, second team all conference, right? At the combine, he ran a 4.6, 10-foot, 8-foot broad jump, which was best in the position group, best in the group. The reason I got him on here is, Brandon Graham got hurt, right? When Brandon Graham got hurt, he ended up producing 9 pressures while he was on IR. You already know Bryce Huff has been erratic all year, and Josh Sweat is now a free agent. So if you look at the Eagles' defensive line chart, I don't know where you go. I go to our lads, but when you go on our lads, it's red right now. It's red with question marks. It's riddled. This guy can easily go in and produce. I don't know if you have any thoughts on him, but that's somebody. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a path. I mean, they drafted him for a reason. They have an archetype that they definitely go for. Bryce Huff doesn't look like what they wanted him to be. Nolan Smith has definitely had some moments, so I wouldn't count him out completely. And yeah, Joshua could walk. I mean, I'm sure they're going to draft 2 Georgia defensive ends, and they're going to add guys. They might even sign somebody in the offseason. We'll see. But yeah, that's again, we're talking dart throws. We're talking you get somebody now who has a chance through training camp to show you something to stick on your roster. And if it looks like he's not getting snaps, then you cut him. These aren't like high value ads where you're trading a bunch of draft capital to go get him. I would say like Baron Browning is a similar one, right? Denver guy, could get some run. But no, I think Jile Hunt is absolutely the kind of shot you want to take. I have a similar one, same draft class, Jonah Ellis for the Broncos. You got an up and coming defense. They've got a bunch of guys. Only one has really ascended. And Jonah Ellis, you can get him for free right now. Like, why are we not doing
crazy? You just said the Broncos. I couldn't call that defensive line when Baron Browning was there. Nick Bonito. I liked Bonito. I wasn't sure. As soon as they moved that one player, didn't it just pop off? Isn't it amazing how that works sometimes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And now you see Bonito's turning into something. But again, it's all about, but also the other thing we got to think about, just like running backs, we changed the way we look at them. Nobody's a full-time starter anymore. Defensive lines, you got rotations, and some of these guys are very efficient on limited snaps. You got guys like Josh Uche a couple years ago who got 10 sacks and played like 30% of snaps. You can find value in these rotational guys.
I guess these leagues here, these next three I have, because I'm always looking for like the potential to be elite defensive linemen. I'm going to do them all together. I'm going to pick your brain on this, but you mentioned it. Hey, talk about efficiency. This guy played like one snap, comes back with the sack. Drew Sanders of the Broncos. Who doesn't know who Drew Sanders is at this point? He was him and Jack Campbell were the number 1, number 2 linebackers coming out of college a couple years, right? Sanders wasted no time coming back, making an impact from his neck injury. That's a stash. I assume he should be owned, but maybe you have a league that doesn't have a taxi, or maybe you have some situation where some jackass dropped him. I don't know. I'm looking at Drew Sanders. I'm looking at Lucas Van Ness still. He hasn't done much yet. He's playing around 30, 45% snaps over the first 2 seasons in Green Bay. Like we said at the beginning of this podcast, you're looking through your availabilities. You're looking through your stashes. You're looking through possible players that were in IR, possible players on ADP, right? The way the Packers do it is they always have the guys next man up in front of them. Usually takes these guys about 2-3 years to get on the field. And then the last one here in this category, I don't say his name right, Arnold Epiketti of the Falcons. I don't know if you know how to say that.
That's right, yeah.
Is it? Okay, Epiketti.
Yeah.
He in college was one that we profiled. You're in drafts with me. He was an excellent 3-4 player. Played 3-4, excellent. When the Falcons brought him in, they played a 4-3. That kind of hurt his growth. He kind of got stuck there for a few weeks. The last couple of weeks, at the end of the year, go figure, he started getting hot. He had 5 sacks over the last 5 games from 13 to 17. So that just shows if you play the guy, he can get in there. And he's playing somewhere around 70% snap usage. To me, that's the sweet spot. That's 65, 75% snap usage. It's not too much. They're going to get hurt. It's not too little, whatever. But if that translates into next season, the Falcons play at 3-4. That's a player I'd probably be invested in too. So those are my stashes as far as looking at elite defensive linemen go.
Or like potentially elite. Yeah.
What's that?
Potentially elite, right? None of those would be elite right now. But like Epiketti is one. I thought he'd have a better year this year than he did because he had a pretty decent rookie year. And there was like all the snaps in the world to have. They brought somebody in via trade, but it took him a while to gain traction, and maybe he's figuring it out. But I could see them bringing in competition. And don't forget, Braylon Trice will come back, and I'm sure he'll play a factor on that defensive line. Luke Van Ness again, but this is why, like you're talking about, like these stashes, these guys that were like, there's a reason they're stashes. They haven't popped yet, right? And Van Ness definitely has not popped. I don't even he's had some flashes, but he's super young. We always knew it. He was super raw. We always knew it. Yeah, it'll take some time. Defensive line is hard to translate unless you're a designated pass rusher, and he's supposed to be a little bit more than that. And Green Bay's got it's a tough assignment for him because they don't have a lot of guys that draw a lot of attention. Nobody's like Gary might draw a double team sort of, but he's kind of limited too. He's not playing alongside anybody hyper elite, so he's having to earn his way. And I think that's a good one. I think Van Ness is definitely the kind of guy. It's like, look, they spent a pretty high first round pick on him. They knew he was developmental, so it's not like they're probably sitting there thinking, "Oh, this guy's garbage." But
yeah, right.
But yeah, again, the dart throws, but what are we looking for? We're looking at profiles. We're looking at athletes. We're looking at who are guys who were good enough in college to get drafted high. You're not looking for these, like linebacker is the position where you can find an undrafted free agent off the street, not pass rusher. That does not happen. Like these things, like pass rushers are born, not created, as they say.
We'll kick linebackers off next. I actually got two more I'm thinking about. I'm going to pick your brain on. For defensive linemen, and again, you're right. I don't know if you play Madden, that unlockable trait. It's so hard to figure out that defensive lineman's unlockable trait. It's so hard to crack. Malcolm Koonce was a guy that kind of sort of popped. He's been on IR in a couple places, so there's a silver lining there. He's going to be on a short-term deal, so he's going to be on a proven deal because he goes back on the market in 2026. So an IDP owner that has the spot, I think Koonce would be there too. And then my last one here, Keon White. I don't know if I'm on, if I'm off. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go down the Keon White experiment again. You got thoughts on those guys?
No thoughts on Koonce at all. Weirdly, honestly, I probably never thought about him for 2 seconds. Keon White, though. Keon White is one of the most interesting defensive players in the world. The guy was the word raw does not define what he was. He was more raw than raw. Coming out of college, he was a converted tight end. He literally did not have anything resembling a pass rush plan when he was attacking. I remember the PFF guys laughing after watching his film because it was he was so aggressive, but half the plays he's on the ground because he didn't know what he was doing, but he was still effective. And for him to do what he did this year already, I think says the world about his development curve. I would definitely think he's in for a year 3 smash. Okay. Because he's already starting to figure it out. He's already playing snaps. This is more than I would have expected in year 2. So even if it's been a rocky road, a rocky road for him is smooth sailing for most people because he has so far to come.
Yeah. I guess the term, people talk about recency bias. People talk about the other term, prisoner of the moment. Right now I'm a prisoner of the moment because he burned me. Yeah, let's not forget the guy's young. He's ahead of the bell cow here. He's ahead of the curve. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. If you have room, you know what, man? I don't judge anybody the first 2-3 years, whatever it is on Sleeper, I can stash him. I don't judge him. If I can put him in there, I'll put him in there. But you like White better than some of those guys on that list, huh?
Oh, yeah, I like White better than a lot of guys. I like White better than guys I have rostered in some cases just because of what he could be. And what that, again, and that defense is still it's like Mapu, the reason I pointed him out. We don't know what that defense is going to look like in 2-3 years, but it's a good chance those guys are going to be a part of it. And they could be those cornerstone type players that carve out a role, and again, who else? Name me another pass rusher on the New England Patriots that matters. When it comes time to pay Keon White, he might get a bag. He might go to another team. He might go to Baltimore if they're still hurting for pass rushers. I don't know. I think but now again, he could regress. He could be maybe he just never figures out the instincts part of it. I don't know. But we're rolling dice over here, dude. We're not,
With linebacker, you said it earlier. Linebacker is a volume game. We like to think we know more than the coaches do sometimes. I like to pull my PFF. I like to pull my metrics, my to explain my rationale. Generally with linebacker, I'm looking for who has the perfect mixture of both of those things and who can kind of just step in for that next level. And that's what I got here with the Cowboys. I'm looking at, how do you say his name? Maurice Lafau. Did I say that right? I hope I did. Liu.
Maurice Lafau, yeah.
Yeah. He had
out of Notre Dame.
Starts? Yeah.
Leafau,
Overshown's going to be hurt to start the year. Kendricks may or may not be a free agent. So I think that's a good stash for these middle type of teams. Edge Cooper, we know that name. Heck, if you had a rookie draft, you better know who that is, right?
Yeah.
That's a good stash.
Yeah, we
mentioned a lot of these names Do you have any linebackers? How about Sir Voice Dennis? There's another one, right? Britt outplayed
Oh
himself
yeah,
a job.
he's top of
different.
my list. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Who do you
Sebastian
have?
Dennis. Well, I got a few. Like Dennis, for
Okay.
one, like that's a guy I've been on since he got drafted. He's just the kind of archetype I like, a little undersized, really instinctual, but just like attacks plays. He's like that's why he got hurt though a lot this year. He's very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But like when he got on the field, you could see that Tampa Bay was kind of prioritizing him over KJ Britt, who everybody thought KJ Britt was like the breakout dude. And it wasn't him. They wanted Dennis. Dennis didn't stay healthy. I think there's a place for him next year when he is healthy. We'll see. And who knows when Levante David retires, moves on, whatever. If he might play until he's my age, it's possible. I have Mohamed Diabate. I think he has a chance to really find snaps for Cleveland next year. Like again, they like when there's been time, they put him on the field. I think it's him and who's our old buddy, the first round bust from Pittsburgh. I can't think. They've been playing a lot together.
You
Omar
talking about
Speights,
Jordan Hicks? Oh, you're talking about Devin Bush. That's who you're talking
Devin
about.
Bush. Yeah. Him and
Mhm.
Diabate have been playing a lot together.
Oh my God.
And I
you're
think
bringing me
Muhammad
back.
would be the guy who gets prioritized out of those two long term. Omar Speights, I was big picking him up all over the place this year. I was patient with him. He's on the field now. I see no reason why they would not. Like if they started the year off with Christian Rosenboom, I'm sure we can see Omar Speights starting next year. Chad Muma, I think he's just a good player. He doesn't get a lot of opportunity. I think he's the kind of guy I hang on long term in Dynasty to wait for him to get his opportunity. Tommy Eichenberg, that dude was awesome at Ohio State. I just don't see how he doesn't earn I don't see how he doesn't earn playing time eventually in the NFL with his mentality, the way he plays. He's just an instinctive, big-bodied linebacker. Like, even if he's not the guy you want in coverage, he's going to help against the run, and that does matter in the NFL, despite what people say. And then two guys that are kind of like off the radar completely, in my opinion, for most people, but there are people to think about. David Long is not on a roster. He has jumped around a lot this year, but he's only 28. He's a pretty good football player. And I don't know what happened this year, but I think that's a guy that if you can just get him for free and you have space on your roster, hang on through the offseason. If he gets signed in the right situation, we could be looking at the kind of mercenary season that just really gives you like high-end LB2 production for free. And Willie Gay, if this is kind of a looking out, but Demario Davis can't play forever. Willie Gay's a pretty decent linebacker. If he ever gets a chance to play that LB2 role in New Orleans, again, we're looking at like cheap production. And with linebacker, it's like how you play running back in a lot of these leagues. Like zero RB is the number one strategy these days. Zero LB is kind of it too, where you find these guys that nobody's thinking about who can get me an 85% snap share and just, get me 7 tackles a week or something. Like it doesn't have to be crazy. And all these, and again, you're not just finding elite linebackers on the waiver wire. People hoard them. People don't want to trade them, even when they're no longer as elite. Like Quay Walker, like he's just not that dude, but people think he is. So yeah, those are the kind of dart throws I would be looking at.
You brought up 2 points that I wanted to go back to. I got drugged by a really good friend of mine, and I don't want to put his name out here because he's in the industry, talking about Willie Gay. Oh, Willie Gay sucks. Willie Gay. Well, guess what? When Willie Gay plays, he actually gets me points. So in one of our deeper leagues, I beat him with Willie Gay, and I'm like, yeah, how about that? You know what I mean? Yeah, if you have one of those, I don't know, me and Giles, we play these crazy leagues, right? So if you have one of these leagues where you can just stash, I don't know, 12, 15 line, go ahead and put them in there. It ain't gonna hurt you. The case on KJ Britt, you were with me in the offseason, right? Everybody kept talking him up, right? So he was hyped.
Everybody.
And okay, I might stick him in my flex. Then all of a sudden he became an LB3. Then all of a sudden he became an LB2. Then all of a sudden he was fringe. I'm like, wait a second, y'all are paying way too high for a guy that we don't even know if he can cover yet. So I think that's what happened. Britt was like, he was like Vanilla Ice in the 90s. You know what I mean? He was the next great thing until we couldn't deliver. I don't know.
Well, and a lot of times especially when you talk about just like fantasy, not so much dynasty, but like with IDP, it's just a lot of trend following. Like it became really trendy this offseason to ask the question, is Jack Campbell even good? Yeah, he's good. It's just
Yeah.
Alex Anzalone's also good, and Dan Campbell likes him. Jack Campbell's not bad just because he didn't win the job right away. But that's what we do. Like this year, I heard in the offseason on a fairly popular IDP focus show, they were asking the question, is Ivan Pace going to get Ivan Paced by another guy who we never heard from this year? They were asking themselves that question, is Ivan Pace basically going to lose relevance on this roster? That did not happen. It was never going to happen. And
Right.
KJ plays the other side of that, where it's like, oh, here's this role that opened up. Well, here's the guy who's going to fill it. Must be awesome, right? And sometimes that works. Like Robert Spillane was that kind of guy. He filled the role. It looks pretty awesome. But yeah, you have to open yourself up to the possibility. What if we're wrong? And then look, okay, if we're wrong, who benefits? And that's where the Savasier Dennis play comes. And I think it's like playing contrarian with linebacker can make you a lot of money in fantasy because everybody's going to bet big. Like I can't tell you how many leagues I bought Nakobe Dean in this offseason because, they brought in our buddy from Tampa Bay who's not good at playing linebacker. Why can't I think of his name right now? Who the Eagles cut? But yeah, they bring in
Devin White.
Yeah. They bring in Devin White. They pay him $5 million, which contract tells everything. A 1 year, $5 million deal doesn't mean he's like the guy. But everybody said, Dean's dead. So I sent out offers everywhere. And thank God that because it paid off. Like, again, like these guys, you have to know how to play the position. And this is another point I wanted to get to with linebacker. Because with running back, we see it all the time. Like the Frank Gores of the world. Why does this guy keep getting carries, right? Like he's not the most talented dude on the team, but coaches trust him. Devin Singletary is a great example of that. He's not a great athlete. He's not big. He's not fast. Nothing great, but like coaches keep trusting him. There are linebackers like that, like the Robert Spillanes of the world. They're not these guys who blow up the combine. Like, you think about how many undrafted linebackers have become like 10-year starters in the NFL. And it's because coaches learn to trust them. And I think like with a guy like Tommy Eichenberg, I think he could be that type of guy. I don't know if he will be, but yeah, I think you just got to look at who do coaches trust. And sometimes like who plays tells you everything.
So Tommy's a guy that I'm looking like on the deeper kind of leagues, like deep side of this. I got two names here. And this is the part of the podcast that I like. I like the deeper side, the outside the mid shallow end of the swim pool. Let's go on the deeper side here. What I like to look for here is PFF, those matrices, those thoughts. That stuff matters when you're trying to decide between apples and oranges. So my first linebacker here, I got two in here, right? But Jalen Carley's of the Colts. Jalen Carley's, he's got a PFF grade of an 82, okay? Where he benefits is the fact that he can cover, where the other two aren't as great in coverage. Speed's an old man now. Franklin, I think, has got another year. Speed's in his 30s. He's a free agent this year. We might see Carley's in that role. Just the case for Carley's here, I'm just going to read some numbers here. EJ Speed, overall PFF's at 52.8. Carley overall 75.0, okay? His coverage grade's an 82. He's excellent. Coverage grade on Speed's only a 44.5. Run defense grade on Carley's is 64. Speed's a little bit better at 67. But again, if you can cover, you're going to be on the field 3 times more than maybe the guy who plays 1 down or 2 down, right? Now, I'm not saying he's a better player or what have you, but I say if they want to move on, it is a possibility that Carley's is going to get more playing time, especially the numbers that he's put up. And he's got Franklin has a tendency of missing tackles. Speed has a tendency, if you watch tape and film, he'll overrun a play or two. Again, that Colt position is so lucrative because they play all the snaps all year round. They're like one of the top teams to play their linebackers. So just looking ahead in 2025, that may be a guy that dramatically maybe somebody you can pick up and actually play in some of these style formats. I don't know. Have you thought about Carley's at all?
Not really. Well, for one, I do want to say a little context. Like for me, Speed, a lot of those grades, I think some of that might have to do with like he hasn't been entirely healthy all year. And I think that definitely would have affected his coverage because I do think he's like a really good player, but like grades don't lie. The play is what it is. Maybe it's the beginning of a trend. Who knows? Weirdly, my thoughts have been Grant Stewart, but I think it's just because I saw an 18 tackle game, and who can forget that?
Right. But you know what? I thought about that too. But like the next week, they had their choice. Which girl do they want to take to the prom? They took dude.
Yeah.
That's a good situation to be in.
But I would say, like one of those things, like you see a blow up game like that, 18 tackles out of a linebacker, like that's not nothing. I don't know a lot of guys who could do that in the world. But yeah, no, I haven't really thought too much about that Colts situation. It is lucrative, like you say, but I have no idea who emerges. Like Franklin, you'd think that there's at least another couple years of him there. They paid him to be the guy. And Speed, I mean, I don't know. There was a point where I thought he was one of the like best players at the position, but this year, like, and again, the more you play, sometimes the more you get exposed, right? We can all look like superstars in 50% of snaps. And he's probably been put into more situations. And again, this is the other thing with linebackers and why their careers are often short-lived is NFL offenses every week, all they do is sit there and think, who can we most easily exploit on the defensive side of the ball? And it's always the linebacker. And it's why the defense has evolved to have less of them on the field for less time because they're the mismatch. We target them in the run game. We target them with tight ends. We try to get them matched up on receivers. That's 100% of what. So yeah, they're going to fail because that's literally what the offenses are trying to do is exploit them all the time. It's no different than NBA. The reason pick and roll matters is because we're trying to get a mismatch on the perimeter and we want our point guard to have to get guarded by a center and now he can just win. So yeah, linebackers, it's one of those positions where the moment they fall off, they're done. Zach Cunningham used to be like a near elite guy. He does not play anymore for a reason.
So I have one more in this category, and this is kind of a dart throw, but the more I talk about it, the more I kind of talk myself into it. Brenton Cox Jr., that's a dude that went undrafted by Green Bay. Like I said, you know how that team is. But he plays with the Packers. He doesn't get the snaps. He doesn't get snaps, but just hear me out, okay? When he's on the field, he does stuff. Week 11, 31% of snaps, 3 tackles, 1 sack. Week 12, 45%, just a tackle. Week 13, 2 tackles, a sack. Gets back on in week 15, 2 tackles, a sack. Week 16, 2 tackles, a sack. Do you see my trend? And these are all 46% or less percent of snaps. So again, if there's a pathway to get a Brenton Cox Jr. on the field, I kind of wanted to throw him in this episode, Giles, because like for our 32-team leagues, people are like, none of these players on here I can use. None of these players I can use. Go ahead and stash Brenton Cox Jr. and see if he gets any playing time. There you go, my friends.
Yeah, well, and again, that sometimes it's as simple as scrolling the sleeper. Like what I'll do sometimes is I'll go into sleeper and I'll sort by position and then I'll sort by team. And I'm like, what player at this position is not rostered? And then you're not rostered. Let me look at you a little bit. And if I don't know them from college, let me look at where, and I'll do, and that's where sometimes I come up with, like, I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about Jamin Sherwood before I picked him up, but it's like, I see a linebacker. It looks like he's in the mix to at least play sometimes. Oh, he's a converted safety. Cool. It's just like those things. You start building that profile in retrospect. And this is exactly the kind of thing you're talking about with Cox. Like, find a guy who succeeds in limited opportunity, and all you need is that opportunity to increase, and you profit.
Mm-hmm. For those on Spotify, welcome in. For those on iHeartRadio, for those on Apple Podcasts, I literally am talking to Giles here. We're talking about just different possible deep stashes depending on your league size, and we're kind of on the deeper end now. We're on the part of the swim pool. We're going off the diving board, right? I pulled up the free agency tab is what I did. I'm just looking through free agency on some of these players. I don't stash a lot of DBs, CBs, whatever, but I do understand the rationale in doing it. There's a couple players that I think are in for a good line for some volume play. Damani Richardson of the Panthers, he had a great 3-game stretch. They benched Jordan Fuller for him. Jordan Fuller's a free agent. He might not come back. So that may be a guy that you guys may be interested in as both Woods and Fuller actually are free agents in 2025. The rationale, I think they would re-sign Woods. I would hope so. But Richardson could easily be the DB1 on that team. CB required leagues. Dax Hill, surprisingly, it's one of those IR guys like we were talking about. I like Jaden Hicks. I always have. You see, I pull up early in drafts for him. I see that coming up with especially with Reed being a free agent. You mentioned Smith, which was an excellent one earlier. Cameron Kitchens, for a little bit of snap count, there was a couple week stretch where he's hitting all the highlight films with his impact plays. To be honest, DB is such a dart throw. It's so hard to pick players. So I think what I want to do here before I start reading some of the free agent conspiracies that I have in my head, do you have anybody, defensive back, linebacker, defensive line, in some of those bigger premium deeper leagues that we have that maybe I didn't talk about or that you're interested in?
I think I probably covered let me see. Well, I didn't talk about Chop Robinson. I mean, look, in most leagues, he should have been picked up, or been drafted and held, but like he's really been coming on. Not a high tackle floor, but there's definitely he's got elite tools, and Miami needs them because they're always hurt on the defensive line. And Tyrese Knight, again, Seattle. I mean, like we're seeing a lot of snaps there, way earlier than we would have guessed, and like overall, like he's not the weak point of that defense. So I don't know. That could be something that we see grow next year. It's like obviously Ernest Jones is the guy there, but Tyrese Knight definitely one to watch. Again, it's like who can we get in that year 2? Linebackers year 1 rarely pop. He is popping now, so could we build on that next year?
Yeah. So again, this is such an early looking at free agency. But some of these teams, you can kind of read the tea leaves. It's kind of telling what's going on. Some of these we just don't know. So I guess that would be my fourth and final tip for this episode. Guys, in the offseason, pay attention to free agency. These teams are going to tell you, if they have value, if they want to re-sign a player, whether they're unrestricted or restrict free. You'll have to come back on, Giles, when we do the free agency, because we kind of break down the different kinds of tags and we kind of explain our takes. You'll have to come back on for that one if you're interested.
Oh, no, that'd be good. Off season, big time, like around the draft, free agency.
Hell yeah.
Well, and the other thing, too, is what I would say, pay attention to free agency, but it's from 2 angles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do guys sign, but then they vacate? So who takes the job behind them? Like one signing can impact 3 guys. It's all like if Khalil Mack leaves, cool, Thule elevates, but then that opens up a rotational spot behind Thule. Reddick, who knows what's going to happen to him? Judon,
here's some of the conspiracies that I have right now in my brain, just looking through the tracker. Okay, Ernest Jones, oddly enough, doesn't have an extension yet. I mean, they got time to sign him.
They're going to pay.
They do.
They're going to pay.
You know who else needs to be re-signed? Zach Bond. Jamie Sherwood, I mentioned it earlier, free agent. Cam Bynum is a free agent. The Vikings already have, some good players back there, so he may go to another team. Keep an eye on that. Jeremy Chin only got a 1-year deal in Washington, right?
There's a reason he got a 1-year deal, though.
Robert Spillane.
Yeah, Bob Spillane could definitely leave because he's like age-wise, what they'll have to pay him. It doesn't make sense for a rebuilding team. But like Ernest Jones, I'm confident he'll stay because Mike McDonald wants his Roquan Smith type, and I think Ernest Jones that's what he traded for there.
So you said Spillane, you think he'll resign or he won't?
No, I think he'll go because what's the point? Yeah. What are we paying him money for? We don't even have a quarterback. That's not that to me, like those linebacker positions, you fill those out when you're ready to compete for
luxury.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say. And you know who else?
That's why Tommy Eichenberg will be a stash. Yeah.
Yes, that was my take. Both Spillane and Divine Diablo are free agents.
Yeah, well, Diablo, like, I don't know. The play is not always great with him. The grades.
You you can literally build a team on everything but the linebacker, like the Rams did, and then get that as a luxury.
Or just pay anybody. Like, just draft a bunch of dudes. Who cares if they suck? You'll figure it out.
Let me throw some other names at you here, and I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I'm terrible. I always get drugged for names. The The Texans got Azeez Al-Shaair. He's a free agent too. EJ Speed with the Colts. Javon Holland with the Dolphins. Malcolm Koonce to the Raiders. Any thoughts in there, my friend?
Yeah, Azeez is interesting because there's a history between the coach and the player. Like, they like him, but we've got a lot of those issues with the roughing calls. Like, he got suspended for a reason. I don't know. I could see him walk because there's a lot of young talent. Henry 202, however you want to say his name.
Yeah, right.
And then Christian Harris, like young talent. And again, they're probably like D'Amico is a linebacker. He knows how to draft linebackers. He's going to draft a linebacker in this class more than likely at some point between rounds 2 and 5. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I think they've done fine without Azeez most of the year. He's been hurt, suspended. Like, I don't know that they'll prioritize him given all the roster constraints they do have. And
we mentioned Tully being wheels up because you have Mac being a free agent and all the money they owe Bosa. But Mac himself going to another team, dude, that guy's getting better with age. 17.5 pass pressure rate, 89.6. He's still a steady defender. He's a free agent on here. Another sack guy, boomer bust, Patrick Jones of the Vikings. Him leaving might boost Dallas Turner's value. Dallas Turner need to find and get some snaps. I'm hoping he'll probably be a guy next year. Giles, he'll probably be a guy next year when we look at the ADP 2 years out.
Dallas Turner
going to be a get. Mm-hmm.
Oh, big time, because he didn't pop, but he's still in a good position to just come out and become like kind of that alpha pass rusher. Like Grenard isn't that guy. He's good, but he's not like the type who just like he's not a Nick Bosa. He's not. Dallas Turner maybe could be. We'll see.
The Niners got Dre Greenlaw possibly auditioned for a new team. I mean, he was hurt all year, came back, did well, got hurt again. He's a free agent. Greenlaw is. If and again, we do these podcasts so early, that's sometimes a blessing and a curse. If that happens, we didn't talk about D Winters this podcast. D Winters may be a dude. Who knows? But it's just something to put out in the universe,
Yeah, when trying to project anything with the 49ers at any position group is very difficult.
Right.
Outside of their safeties, I feel pretty confident projecting some of those guys, but like Malik Mustafa. But I don't know. Like, Greenlaw is tough. Do they keep him for sentimental reasons? And their doctors kind of understand best his situation. I don't know a lot of teams that are going to be super psyched to jump out and pay a 27-and-a-half-year-old linebacker coming off 2 significant injuries.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know. But, like I said, stranger things have happened before. Jumping over to defensive linemen, I'm looking at the money right now. There's a couple interesting things. Jonathan Allen of the Commanders, they can save $25 million by dumping him. That'd be wheels up for your boy Newton. You mentioned him earlier. Falcons can save $16 million. A cool $16 million to get rid of Grady Jarrett.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah.
This one here, I don't think will happen, but maybe. Who knows? Leonard Williams, if they want to move on from Leonard Williams, the Titans can save $12 million. But I don't think that's going to happen. That guy seems to be like every couple weeks, he'll make a highlight, he'll make a big play. That team really doesn't have anything else. So I can see Leonard Williams re-signing. Again, I'm just guessing at this point.
Wait, you talking about Leonard Williams with the Seahawks?
Yeah, I meant Seahawks. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's what I was going to say is I would have said that earlier in the year, but then after some of the things he's done this year, no, I think they keep building with him. I mean, he's just a super stable presence. I don't think he breaks. Well, I guess the question is, what does he want to get paid? And it always comes down to that in free agency. What is a player's expectation of their salary? And if that kind of outpaces the team's ability to pay them and retain them, then they're going to move on.
There's a couple crazy ones on here. $35 million for Von Miller. No, 35-year-old Von Miller. No,
No,
8.5 million. That's
I don't.
ridiculous.
I don't see a lot of people lining up to pay Von Miller anymore.
Clowney, 8 million. Samson Ubacan, 8 million. I can see those guys leaving. Josh Sweat, he'll probably want a payday somewhere
He's
else.
getting
Maybe you
paid.
guys.
He's getting paid. Somebody wants
Yeah.
to bring him in. I think he's just a consummate professional. You look at what he's done in Philly, you know, he hasn't like really broken through at any point, but he's been consistently good. And this year, like he didn't kind of take over that like alpha Reddick role, but he was good. He was the lead guy in that pass rush. Like, I don't know. I
So,
think
what's interesting about that, like what you're saying with Josh Sweat, though, he didn't do his early extension in 2021. And then when they did revise his contract, it was that 1-year deal. So now he's up on the market. I bet you he's probably going to wait to see what the highest guys get paid and try to get a 1-year deal somewhere. So I can see him signing with a contender. I
don't
agree. He's going
know.
to get paid somewhere.
I don't see a lot of NFL guys do the 1-year deal to go get another payday. I just don't see that because like all it takes is one injury and Achilles and nobody's paying you, man. I feel like every time I see an NFL player wanting to get paid, it's they want max years. Why did Reddick not play this year? He wanted more. He wanted years. So, you know, I don't know. I think guys are trying to secure the bag as much as they can, get as much guaranteed money as possible. And again, Sweat might end up staying in Philly because maybe they want to pay him, but I just don't see how it makes sense because they draft all this depth, and then why do you draft it if you're going to pay the guy you already have when it's time for him to move on and get expensive?
Hey, on that note, we're going to talk about Reddick here. I got two guys that kind of get kicked the can on a little bit. But Reddick, are you in or out? I get it.
I'm
with
out.
Reddick,
I'm out.
You're out.
Why would I be in?
I think, but hear me out though. Hear me out. This rationale here. I get it. There's some bad karma. I get it. He screwed his whole capital up. You referenced it. You articulated it well, but that 2022 stand-up performance when he did all those great things, it's not that far away. If he signs somewhere on a cheap deal and shuts his mouth, he could be some waiver wire fodder somewhere. You're out anyway.
No, absolutely. Look, don't get me wrong. He could be the Chiefs signed Reddick on a minimum deal so he can rehab his value, and he goes out and puts up 13 sacks in a Super Bowl run or whatever. A contender does it. And yeah, that might happen. He is very talented. But I also just watched the guy who his concern was getting more money, so he gave away most of his money and got less money. Like that was just they made no sense. And when a player starts to do that, let me say Le'Veon Bell, let me say Antonio Brown, you rarely see those things turn around. Okay, did we see Chandler Jones kind of figure it out and continue to be kind of an elite player down? But then at the end, he went crazy again. I don't know, man. Like Reddick's talented, no question. I'm not paying anything of value to get him on my roster.
I don't really pay anything of value for any kind of IDP player unless he's like an elite kind of dude.
Unless it's IDP only, yeah.
But it's just kind of fun to kind of talk. Question. This was a mailbag question. I figured I'd throw it in here. And just to pick your brain, because a lot of these guys are kind of like on, journeyman at this point, but we all remember the Chase Young. So Justin asked a mailbag question. He said, hey, is Chase Young still worth the stash? He knew I was doing a stash show. Is he worth the stash? Again, context matters. A 12-team, 3 DL league. So I'm going to ask it to you. Is he worth the stash to you? How about we'll go. Let's take it even a step further. Is he worth the stash in a 12-team, 3 DL? And is he worth the stash in a 12-team 2 DL? That's the question I want to know. What do you think?
I mean, I guess it depends on who you have and what your settings and scoring are. But like from a talent perspective, I think he's worth a stash forever because he's one of the greatest pass rushing prospects we've ever seen. But it's just never like between health and like all the things, like it just hasn't really coalesced into sustained elite play, where I could feel comfortable. Like even if all the stars align, what am I really getting out of him? On what defense does he succeed? Where does he end up? Like all these things. But again, like if your hole in your roster is defensive line and there's no reasonable way for you to fill it with an elite guy, yeah, sure, like shoot for the stars and hope he turns into something. But when do you decide to cut him? When do you decide to play him? Like That's the thing with guys like him. It's really hard to know when they're on that positive trajectory or not, or when the bad game is just the beginning of a stretch of bad games. Like guys,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like poker, right? You only want to see a pot with a good hand because you could get in there with a weak hand, hit a pair, and then lose more money down the line, right? Because you stayed in the hand longer than you needed to. And I think Chase Young could be like one of those sunk cost guys that you hold on to for years when you could have cycled in somebody more.
So I thought this was a smart question because I went back before I did my rationale. I did some data, and thank you, Dustin, for dropping this in the chat. But week 13 onward of this year, Chase was a top 30 defender. He had 41 pressures, pressure rate 12.6. That's good enough for a starting job somewhere in the NFL.
Oh no,
So
100%.
He'll probably be. So I guess the question: 12-team 3DL, he'd start. Yeah. 12-team 2DL, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably have him. He's going to get drafted in the bigger concepts like me and you play in. He'll get drafted, but he won't be relied on. You know what I mean? He won't.
No, he'll be a matchup play. It's like, oh, he's playing against Aiden O'Connell this week. Sweet, we could get 2 sacks out of that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's where I'm thinking.
But again, like almost anybody's worth a stash, depending, like as long as they're a starter on a team. It's just you got to kind of weigh how it fits into your lineup. But yeah, I think
Right.
Chase Young, in terms of upside, is absolutely up there. Like,
that's my struggle with these shows because, like, I'm talking about players. You know, we're talking about the Jalen Carleys. I'm like, no, don't drop Logan Wilson over Jalen Carleys. You got to know your concept. Anybody can be a starter anywhere. I'm just trying to lead you guys on the right path with the right breadcrumbs and the right trail of players.
well, and I think sometimes the important thing is like drawing a line from the IDP guy to the offensive guy. Asking if you should drop Logan Wilson for somebody is like asking, should I drop Joe Mixon for the waiver wire star of the week? Like, you don't do that. Just because he's hurt, you don't do that in Dynasty, and Logan Wilson's one of those guys. You have to understand who are the guys who like are above the cut line no matter what their situation.
So I was trying to figure out like a deeper play for defensive tackle. That's really hard to do because, like I said, a lot of these guys are a dime a dozen. But I'm looking at the money. I'm trying to, because the money sometimes tells you a story too. The Cowboys have a guy. I don't even know. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. Osa, Odighixuma. The X throws me off. Is it Osa Demexo? I don't know, but
I've ever heard that name in my life. So
that's amazing. I do the ranking, so he's always like a top 70 inside defender. Yeah. So this is how deep I'm trying to go. I'm trying to woo these.
It's pretty deep because I don't know who he is. So there you go.
He plays for the Cowboys inside. He's kind of a quiet name, kind of a household. What interests me is the interior lineman. He's producing 14.3 pass rush rate. Okay, the Cowboys don't really have too much money, so I don't know if they're going to be able to re-sign guys like this. But he's great in run defense, and he'll gobble up a sack or two here and there. If he gets on the sack line, people will start knowing who he is. But like this year, I've been kind of keeping an eye on them because they're kind of stuck playing what they have. But he may end up being in a situation where, what was that guy? Oh, Christian Wilkins. Remember when Christian Wilkins couldn't get a sack save his life, but he was all about the tackles?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So now all of a sudden he's a sack guy and a tackle guy, right? If this guy starts meshing them out, I pulled up his numbers for you. Didn't have anything first 9 weeks of the season. That's why you don't know him. He had like half a sack. Then he produces 1.5 in weeks 10, 11, 13, another sack. So he's only got interior linemen 4 sacks on the year, but it's his run defense and his pressure rush is what I look at. Again, these deeper leagues, I'm looking at any kind of edge I can get. Here's a player that they're starting. He doesn't have an injury history. He's a younger player. He's got the pass rush, run defense. Get a sack or two. Those are impact. Like, I wouldn't play him in the best balls we play in, but that's a name that probably may be floating out there.
Well, yeah, and before I answer this, I will say I got to go in a few minutes. But like, just imagine like a guy like that. Imagine he signs in Houston. Suddenly, wow, we fill a void with a guy who can get pressure alongside 2 elite pass rushers. Like, somebody like that, if they do change teams, it could unlock them in a way where you're getting way more value than you ever would have expected.
I don't really have anybody else for this podcast. If you want to look at like the secondary, I think Lenore replaces Javarius Ward. If you look at the money, he's probably going to test the market. Lenore's been receiving an extension. I think the writing's on the wall. But yeah, I don't know if you have anybody else, but that's a pretty extensive list. I think we went way deep with these.
Yeah, I think we went
closing thoughts?
deep. No, I don't have any other names like offhand. I mean, I could always talk a million players, but
yeah,
the time is running short, and I'm getting texts.
I hear you. So yeah, I guess we can close this one off. Tell the audience where they can find you, and what you're into this off season, and maybe we can get some better videos coming in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't find me anywhere. I do not promote myself online in any fashion. You can maybe find me in random underdog best ball drafts where nobody talks because you have no chat function. But I'm online. I play on Sleeper. Yeah. I play on Sleeper. I got my leagues. I'm in group chats with you where we talk about rookies and I tell everybody why they're wrong. I've often joked that if I had a podcast, it would be called "Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong." But yeah, no, I'm just online, just playing. I don't really argue with people on the internet much. I just play fantasy football. I'm always trying to find the new thing because so often we get caught up in these long-term trends and we think it's the way it will always be. Like, receivers will always be the most valuable thing in Dynasty, and but like things change, the NFL changes, and we have to react to that. And sometimes you got to see it early. So right now, my big thing, and I'll leave the audience with this, is look at college safeties who convert to linebacker in the NFL. I'm telling you right now, that is the future of nickel defense. When you look at somebody like Demarion Overshown, he was a safety. He became a linebacker in college. There's a reason the Cowboys drafted him, because they want a linebacker style player with safety type coverage skills, not elite, but good enough so they're not a complete liability on the field. And Jamie Sherwood is the same exact thing. These guys are possibly the wave of the future of the LB2 position on teams. That's what they're going to look like. So that's kind of what I do when I'm watching football, and I'm a huge NBA fan. I'm looking at what's the next archetype that's going to take hold in this sport, and how can we leverage that today?
Hey, and I'll tell you what, if y'all want to check out Giles and kind of work he's doing, just hit me up. We always talk. We're always in the chat. Yep. Shout out for you coming on. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you doing these with me. You know what else too? Shout out to the IDP Center. You guys know I do this every single episode. I give the IDP Center a little bit of a shout. They got best ball drafts. They got rookie drafts. They got redrafts. Dynasty. Anything you want over there, join the Discord. Hop on. I'm over there too. But yeah, Giles, I just want to say thanks for coming on with me. I tell everybody all the time, they keep listening. We'll keep making these.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we'll have to do this as we get closer to the draft.
This was just all speculative, and we did it in less than an hour and a half. So until next video, I'm taking a break myself. I already told Giles I'm going down to the Senior Bowl, and I'm going to do some scouting, some rookie scouting. So I'll be down there. I'll be back with some rookie content in probably a month or so. But until then, everybody, talk hard. Take care.
Yes, sir. Later, bro.